Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to take a look at a few clips from an interview with royal biographer Tom Bower, who's recently written a biography of Meghan Markle. And I've got to say, I've taken an instant liking to this guy. He's got a very British way of destroying somebody that he doesn't like. Very subtle. Doesn't get all hot under the collar and flustered and aggressive. He just calmly dismantles. Calmly dismantles Meghan's personality. And I think, apart from the fact that it becomes immediately obvious that he does have a lot of insider knowledge, so it would appear, I tend to agree with everything he says in this interview. Pretty much everything he says kind of adds up when you know a little bit about the personality of Meghan Markle, or at least, again, the way she comes across. It makes sense. Okay, so the first question we're going to see Tom Bower answering here is about the paradox that Harry and Meghan find themselves in now, where it seems like they kind of want to get back in with the royal family, yet at the same time Meghan's doing interviews with The Cut and other magazines and media outlets that are very anti-royal family. The Cut, for instance, they've recently released an article accusing Prince Charles of being a racist. In fact, accusing him of being the royal racist, the one that spoke about Meghan's children. Just a couple of weeks ago, Meghan did an interview with them. So it seems like on the one hand they want back in, on the other hand they don't. This is what Tom Bower has to say about it.
Well, my feeling is that they don't want to come back in. They want all the perks, the titles and the baubles and the power, but don't want to actually come back to Britain and rule the work. They wanted to just milk the system from Montecito.
Yeah, so this is talking specifically about the fact that apparently Meghan Markle is furious. Both Harry and Meghan are furious about the fact that their kids can be called prince and princess now, but they are specifically annoyed about the fact that they're not allowed to be referred to as His or Her Royal Highness because their parents are not working royals. And apparently HRH is a term reserved for working royals, which they're not. So they want the perks, they want all the special treatment, they just don't want to be actually doing anything to earn them. So yeah, 100% right. If it's true that they're being relentless in their pursuit of those titles, which according to all accounts they are.
I thought in the amazing shots during yesterday's procession that Meghan looked pretty much like an intruder. And as an intruder, she's looking for more grist to give to the cut.
Yeah, this is where we have to be careful not to slide into MDS, Meghan derangement syndrome, okay? Because I've seen people posting photos online over the last few days of like a fold in Meghan's skirt, like a crease or something in her dress. And people saying she's wearing a wire. She's not infiltrating Pablo Escobar. But I wouldn't put it past her, to be honest. She is clearly someone who's trying to sell her life on her terms to Netflix and Spotify. So any dirt she could get on the royal family, I guess, or any information that she can then sell on. Does she have any other means of income? Probably not. It seems determined that she's going to live off the fact that she's married to Prince Harry. So yeah. Intruder? I guess so. Wearing a wire? I don't know.
She's sided with the American media against Britain, the Anglophobes like the New York Times, and also The Cut and other magazines and other so-called professors who really take on Meghan's charge against the royal family and make it even worse. So I think she's pretty unhappy in Britain. She doesn't like it that Kate probably looks infinitely better than she does. And Kate probably snubs her because she's been so rude and cruel and inaccurate. And it's a tough time for them, and not least because Meghan, I thought ridiculously when they left yesterday holding hands. I mean, they just are an odd couple by now. Always angry, never content, always complaining. You know, the sooner they go, the better, I think, for Britain.
Yeah, without the insight that Tom Bower has, this is the perception I have of them. They do seem like an odd couple, as he says. I think mainly the oddness is driven by Meghan. It seems that she is almost in a narcissistic relationship with everyone she comes into contact with. It seems like the royal family, who never did any of this, they never instigated any of this madness, or at least that's the way it comes across. She got angry, left, comes back, makes a load of demands, is giving bad press in America, demanding that her kids be called His and Her Royal Highness. It just seems like a bullying, abusive relationship that she has with everyone who gets close to her. That's the way it comes across. Shoot me. Then I think Dan Wootton makes a really good point here, or, well, he doesn't make the point, but he asks the question to Tom Bower What the hell's going on? They seem to hate the royal family so much, yet at the same time they're desperate to have these titles. Why on earth would they want their children to be known as His and Her Royal Highness if they're going to grow up away from the royal family, away from royal duties, in California, in the USA? Why on earth do they need that recognition? What could it possibly be?
Well, simply because that's the only way they can make their money in America, by posing as royals, and they just want them to be princes and princesses. I mean, for Meghan, I think it's more Meghan than Harry. Meghan just sees it as her meal ticket.
Yeah, see, this is the thing for me. It's just not good optics, is it? When you leave the royal family because you're sick of being hounded by the press and you want to go and live away from the royal family, you want to renounce your royal duties, well, with all of that, surely you renounce all of the titles and all the privileges that go along with that, and you go and find jobs in whatever you were doing before. Maybe Meghan could do some acting again. Maybe Harry could find a job in some bloody company somewhere. Surely he's got contacts. But no, their way of generating money is living off the trauma, off all of the bad, nasty things that have happened to them. Because racism, because misogyny, because cold father, because nobody hugged me. Shut up. Shut up. You don't. If these two incredibly privileged, incredibly wealthy people with all of the opportunities in the world, living in their $14 million mansion, making podcasts about how awful their life has been, if that doesn't make you sick, there is something wrong with your brain. You're supporting them because you think it looks good. Or you too, you've got something wrong with you as well. You're a bit simple, or you're narcissistic in some way, because there's no way you can feel sorry for them, I don't think. I don't see it. I don't understand it. Who are the people supporting them? I don't get it.
She just sees the whole thing in her terms. I thought there was a very funny meme that went round soon after the Queen's death, where Meghan is saying it's just absolutely terrible. No one has asked me over the last 2 days if I'm okay.
Because not many people have asked if I'm okay.
And I think that's what it's all about. I think that she took some power from this walkabout with Kate and William. She thought that she was back in the frame and that she's got some authority. You know, the truth is that they are a malign couple. Nothing has changed. Harry, unfortunately, I think, is suffering because, after all, he loved his grandmother. Walking behind her coffin yesterday must have reminded him of that fateful walk behind his mother's coffin in 1997. And it's not easy for him. But Meghan is only thinking about herself. And that is the problem. I don't think anything the royal family can do is going to help them. And in the end, Penguin won the battle to delay the book. But whether that book will ever appear and how it'll appear is up in the air still. So they're just an unhappy couple with huge pressures, not least financial. And they're outsiders here at the moment, and the focus isn't on them, and that makes them even more unhappy.
It is all very strange, and I think that's the bottom line, basically. I think what we're seeing is a narcissist and her husband. A narcissistic woman who has convinced her personalityless husband that he is a victim and she is a victim and the world owes them something, and there are these incredible, interesting people, and that they must be unapologetic in this horrible, racist, misogynistic world that won't just embrace them and love them for the brilliant creatures that they are. And this is a huge problem with narcissists. They are obsessed with themselves, but they have zero idea of how the world perceives them. The world doesn't look at them in general and see two victims. They see two very privileged, rich people who just go around whining all the time about how bad everything is. A couple of spoilt brats. Okay, so now they move on to the sort of petty argument about how Harry is finally going to be allowed to wear his military suit to the funeral, when he was originally told he would have to wear his mourning suit like a common peasant. So a lot of people think now that Charles is sort of giving in to some of the pettier demands because he's worried about unfavourable press that might come as a result of angering them, which just adds another layer of toxicity to the relationship, I think. If he's actually, they're looking to make amends, but perhaps what's the reason for making amends? It might be so that they don't keep slagging him off. The relationship between Harry and his family, to me, looks irreparable. It would take years. It would take a divorce and then years of hard work, I think. So yeah, it's very awkward.
Well, I think that's definitely much Charles's motive, and also he's under such enormous pressure at the moment not least because of his mother dying, but also being king and all the rest of it. He wants to get rid of the minor problems. And if Harry goes on and on and on, it's so much easier to say, oh, God, let the man wear his uniform if it means so much. It's just very, very difficult. There was such a dreadful coincidence that they were in Britain at the time of the funeral, of the Queen's death, and didn't just fly in for the funeral. It's made it all infinitely more complicated. I don't think whether he wears the uniform or not is that important. I think much more important is that Charles and William find a way to neutralise the couple.
Steady on there, Tom. I'll be careful how you word that. You know what happened the last time the royal family tried to neutralise someone? I jest.
In the end, I think many people will demand that they are
stripped to their waist and lashed before being thrown in the stocks. The public demand it. That is how they shall be neutralised.
Demand that they are stripped of their titles altogether and have done with it. But we're some way from that still.
Okay, so here Tom Bower gives a few more comments about how perhaps Charles might want to reconcile with the Sussexes and eventually bring them back into the royal family, which Dan Wootton points out he feels is quite a naive stance. I would tend to agree with Dan Wootton there. I don't think there's any reconciliation possible here, but I guess we'll see. But the reason I think what is said now is interesting is because I feel like that a lot of the time narcissists get away with their narcissistic behavior because they instinctively prey on people who allow them to be narcissistic, and they end up believing the role that they're playing, right? So the people who've never experienced narcissism meet a narcissist, they're innocent, they're naive, and they believe this victim narrative. And I think Charles, in a way, perhaps believes that there is a possible reconciliation because he perhaps, in a way, believes that he has mistreated Harry and Meghan, which I really don't think he has. And then, of course, there could be an element of what we mentioned before, that, you know, he's just worried about the negative press, that if they continue to be perceived as enemies.
Well, Charles is the father, and no father wants to lose contact with his son. And William is the aggrieved husband of Kate, and feels that his brother has betrayed him and his wife and has behaved despicably, and not least Meghan too. And I'm sure the one thing Meghan is not going to do is apologise. Charles is clearly trying to find a way to diffuse Harry's anger, but I think in the end, Harry is completely governed by Meghan, and Meghan only thinks about Meghan, and therefore Charles is going to be disappointed. It's a horrible problem to have to face in this week of mourning about the Queen. But that's the whole point about the Sussexes. It is all about them. And they're not really interested in the rest of the world, not least in Britain mourning the passing of the Queen and wondering how the new king will cope. So I think that Charles is right to let Harry wear his uniform. It placates the problem. He hopes that at least Harry will leave with one grievance less and wait and see then what happens. I'm surprised that he in the end gave their children titles Prince and Princess. It can't bode well in the future either. And I'm puzzled why the Sussexes think that their two children should be HRH when they clearly are not going to work. And we've got to remind ourselves that when Archie was born, Meghan made it absolutely clear through a statement that her son Archie was going to have no title at all. Now suddenly they've all got to have their old baubles, everything. You can't please that couple.
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of the video, you know, I think Tom Bower certainly is expressing what most of us feel just from listening to Meghan, listening from the people involved in this whole shit show. It does seem as though we've got a narcissist in Meghan Markle. We've got Harry, who's, as Tom Bower says, seems to be completely governed by Meghan and her victim narrative, and he seems a bit naive and a bit innocent. And at the end of the day, yeah, Charles is probably just looking to placate the situation, give in to a few of the petty demands, and he's waiting for them to leave the country. I think that's the most likely thing. Obviously, he's probably hurt that he has this situation with his son. I don't think there's going to be any kind of real reconciliation until Harry and Meghan separate and he comes to his senses, though that probably isn't going to happen. It's not like he's a young man anymore. He's older than me, at least. I'm 33. How old is he? Like 37, something like that. I think I think at this point, he's doubled down on his life over there. He's moved over there. He's bringing out a tell-all memoir about his life as a royal. I don't think there is any way back for him. I don't think Charles believes there is either. But they're just trying to tiptoe around this very toxic person that Meghan Markle. I think at this point we can clearly say all evidence points to her being a narcissist. The defense I've heard from people that try to defend her is basically, oh, if you think that, you're racist or you're a misogynist. So I haven't heard anything that says, oh, she's a great person because of this, right? I don't see any. And at the same time, there's plenty of anecdotal evidence from her. I mean, just from her personality, from her podcast, and from the interviews, the gushing interview she gives, the way she talks about herself, the way she seems to have false emotions when she speaks. There's plenty of anecdotal or qualitative evidence to suggest that she is, a narcissist. Although I guess we can never prove anything 100%, can we? I guess they're my feelings on the matter. Hey.